all living in a world gone geek. It's time to geek hard or go home. The website is fake, but the podcast is real. Here's your host, Grounded Geek.
All right, thank you. Thank you for being with us once again on the podcast. As always, I am Jeff, also known as Grounded Geek, and we are at San Diego Comic-Con at home. That's right. We are celebrating San Diego Comic-Con this week because I get to go for the first time ever because it's literally over here at my computer where I'm already sitting. It's the first kind of real day of Comic-Con. The first day was Wednesday, and they do a lot of more educational things. And today was a lot of the more pop culture things. Really get into some cool panels. We're going to share with you the top 5 panels in just a minute. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that are coming up this weekend that you might want to look forward to go check out. But before we do that, I need to introduce you to the panel Gone Geek. Once again, I want to welcome onto the show my good friend Utah. Utah, welcome back.
Greetings, my excellent friends.
So glad that you are here. I don't have any kind of icebreaker this week.
No icebreaker question.
We're kind of going to just jump right into everything that's going on. So I'm also going to welcome our co-host, Allea Stefan. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys.
And this is your first San Diego Comic-Con as well, right?
It is. And I am very grateful to experience it for the grand price of free.
Yes, agreed. Right.
Yes.
I mean, that's the main reason that I haven't gone ever is because it's expensive to, well, not just to get in, but to get there, right? We live
airfare.
Yeah, I can't get out there.
Hotels.
But Utah has been several times. How many again?
My first time was 2013.
And you've been getting tickets every year, right?
I've been very fortunate and lucky that I've been able to get badges every year because it's a hot ticket. It's a very hot ticket. They hand out 150,000 badges, and over, I think, last count, 1.5 million people tried to get them last year.
Jeez.
So the odds are never in your favor.
This year, 1.5 million. What'd you say? 1.5 million?
1.5 million tried for badges. Now,
1.5 million people get to see it this year. That's what's exciting.
I'm assuming everybody, at least 1.5 million people are now, enjoying it.
And don't get me wrong, I would give anything to be out of this pandemic and out of this COVID nonsense and for this to be over. But I'm going to take advantage while I can of the fact that San Diego Comic-Con decided to go virtual this year so that we can all experience it.
And they're doing a great job. I've been super impressed and very happy with how they're handling it. There's at least, I want to say there's anywhere from 250 to 300 different panels, which is right around what they usually have in person. They tend to have a bit more because they actually have more rooms to schedule. And I think they also, some of the major movie studios aren't doing things with San Diego Comic-Con this year because it's gone virtual. But that being said, there's still really great content. I've been impressed with the shows and the panels that they've had. I mean, Amazon Prime has showed up big time this year with their virtual panels. CBS has got some stuff going on. Nickelodeon's on there. So I was worried about content. I was worried that a lot of studios wouldn't want to participate and maybe do their own thing since it's virtual. But kudos to Comic-Con International. They've done a bang-up job so far.
So we're going to recap a little bit of Thursday, the top 5 panels that we got the chance to take a look at. And we're going to do that now.
Number 1.
So number 1 for me has to be the Star Trek panels that occurred today. They did basically 3 combined into one sort of hour and 20 minutes-ish panel. They put together Star Trek Discovery. They put together the new animated series Star Trek Lower Decks, and they had a Star Trek Picard panel. The Star Trek Discovery one was basically just a table read of one of the last episode, I think.
It was a season finale.
Which was kind of fascinating to watch, but also like not at the same time.
Right.
I did enjoy seeing a lot of the kind of behind the scenes special effects they showed. They showed some of the storyboards, which I thought was fascinating. And it was really kind of cool to see the actors just kind of like working those parts. But it also felt like, I mean, it was long for that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't need to see the entire episode talked out in a panel.
I was surprised that they did the whole episode. And it's certainly something that they wouldn't have done in person, I don't think. But I mean, they had the assets, the storyboarding and some of the previous stuff was pretty cool. And it was really neat to see the actors sort of get into their character, like right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
And even though they're obviously sitting in a room in their house, to see them kind of channel the character they're playing and to see it so obviously happen was pretty cool. But a 45-minute table read was not super compelling for me.
Especially when we're all sitting here dying to know when season 3 is coming. We all want to know.
There's so many other things. There's so many questions.
What's coming. We did get an announcement at the very beginning.
Oh, that's right.
Two big announcements. One, that Strange New Worlds has started. That's the next series that's coming out. They have started pre-production. So the writer's room is open and they already have some 10 stories lined up and that they're working on. So that's exciting. That show is actually happening. Many people were very excited to find out that some of the fan favorite characters from Discovery weren't even the necessarily the crew members from Discovery. They were briefly in the story, but everybody's like, we want to see more of them instead. And not instead, but also, yeah.
And I'm glad they did that. I mean, when they brought the Enterprise into Discovery, a lot of people are like, oh, what does that mean? Why are some people were thinking, oh, that's just a crutch because Discovery wasn't doing so well, but Discovery was doing great in terms of viewership. But the fact that, you've got Ethan Peck, Anson Mount, and Rebecca Romaine as like basically the triumvirate for this series, the chemistry between the three of them was great on screen. And it's the Enterprise, for crying out loud. I mean,
right.
Pre-Kirk Enterprise.
Yeah. And I think I just really enjoyed Anson Mount as Pike.
He was great as Pike.
And so I think for me, it was just exciting to know that he was going to get to continue to be that character for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So all three of them going into this other show, I got to, even though I like Discovery and I'll give them props, I got to tell you, I'm way more excited about this show than I am a new season of Discovery, even though I like Discovery, but something about like this sounds more like classic Trek. They're going to go off and explore strange new worlds, right? They're going to go and probably have
a 5-year mission.
Yeah. Maybe a different adventure each week rather than a rolling story. And I really like that. I like the overarching story of Discovery as well, but it'll be nice to see more of that kind of like the classic storytelling again.
No, I think you hit it on the head that this is definitely sounds like much more of the storytelling style of the original series, and I think a lot of people are going to kind of hold on to that. Plus, it is the Enterprise. It may be a different version of it than what we're used to, but it is the Enterprise.
Anytime the Enterprise is involved, I'm interested.
I have to admit that in the last season of Discovery, my favorite episodes were the ones with the Enterprise and Enterprise crew in it. So the fact that they're going to have their own show now, cool. I can't wait.
The other big news that they dropped at the very beginning of that panel was a Star Trek, the very first Star Trek Kids show. They are actually teamed up with Nickelodeon to do Star Trek Prodigy. And we were trying to...
Wesley Crusher.
Yes, we were trying to think, what could this show be about? Obviously, it seems to me Prodigy, it's got to be Starfleet Academy.
It's got to be Starfleet Academy and the cadets, right?
Yeah, it's got to be, or young
kids,
cadets.
I don't know.
And I just think it would be great if it's a Wesley Crusher origin story. Like if we could just see him in school before he gets to the Enterprise. And Will Wheaton could do the voice.
I would be all over that show. I want Will Wheaton to reprise his role as Wesley Crusher.
Now, did they say if it was animated or not? I can't remember.
They didn't.
I was just so excited. I'm like, what? A kids show for Star Trek?
I don't think they mentioned it, but the fact that it's on Nickelodeon,
it probably is.
And the title font, the title graphic looked very animated to me. So, but that's total speculation on my part.
Yeah,
I'll watch it no matter what.
So after they did the Discovery table read, they did a second panel, which was Star Trek Lower Decks. That was pretty fun. They showed a scene from the show. It's obviously going to be a different type of show. The showrunner at the time actually said that it's going, this is the first Trek comedy, which we all know is really the Orville.
The Orville.
Yeah, that's the show that's actually the Star Trek comedy. But the first. I know it's not really Star Trek. People aren't going to write into it.
First party.
Everybody knows that's basically Star Trek. The Orville is.
Yeah.
It should have just been a story. In fact, it feels like Seth MacFarlane pitched a Star Trek show, and Star Trek said nah, and they made it anyway. They just didn't call. You know what I mean? That's whatever.
No, it's absolutely right.
But yeah, this show looks like it's the humor is very interesting. It's definitely not something we're used to seeing involved with Star Trek. It's showrunners was previously involved with Rick and Morty. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the showrunner also does Rick and Morty. So
you can get it's a little bit of that kind of humor going on with Star Trek. Definitely. That's strange to think about, but there it is.
I liked the clip they showed. I thought it was funny. And I think it's the type of things that you kind of think about and talk about. Like, nothing as mundane as like, how do they shower? But stuff like, well, what are the grunts doing in the lower decks?
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on the bridge crew and whatever else, the glamorous things that in adventures you see, now we get to see what doing the laundry on the starship's like. Or,
Exactly.
So,
and I did think it was kind of interesting. Jerry O'Connell is a voice. He plays
he's
the
one
number
of the bridge
one,
crew, right?
Well, he plays number one on that show, and he's married to Rebecca Romaine, who is number one
on the other show.
On the other show. So they're both number ones in Star Trek. So that was kind of an interesting little funny thing. And then finally they ended with a Picard panel, which I thought was really, really kind of cool. I mean, anytime I can listen to Patrick Stewart talk about stuff, he's such what a treasure that man is.
They could film him sitting on a stool reading the phone book, and I would tune in and watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah. One of the biggest revelation from that panel was that he prefers the nickname Pea Stew. So somebody gave him that nickname. He even said where it was, and I've forgotten. I had it in my notes, but I forgot.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago. I forgot.
Somebody called him Pea Stew, and he likes that one. So, and that was because Allison Pill called him SPS. Sir Patrick Stewart, and
so SPS.
Nobody knew who she was talking about at first. I mean, I knew immediately that's
not even
what she was
Patrick
saying.
Stewart knew.
Patrick Stewart was like, "Who is she talking about?" And then she explained it, and then he told the story about Pea Stew, and he's like, "That's his preferred nickname." Now we know.
And so now I will forever refer to him as Pea Stew.
Yeah, Pea Stew, Knight of the Realm, Pea Stew,
Sir Pea Stew.
But yeah, it was just, I thought that was an interesting panel. It was cool to hear. Marina Sirtis was,
she's hilarious.
She was really like,
she might have been drunk. I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering. What time was it wherever she was? Because she kept interrupting and she was funny though. I mean, she's always been really funny, and it's just,
she was roasting Pea Stew.
Exactly. But which is so funny because her character on the show is so reserved, and she's the emotional one, the one who, and then you get her, and she's got that British accent, and she's just like, just bombastic, and it was so funny to see that clash. But yeah, she really was trying to get all the attention for a while there. She kept trying to, every time somebody would butter up Pea Stew, she would try to bring him back down. She's like, no, his head's going to get too big. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
We've had him trained for 30 years.
I know.
Stop it.
It's great. But he is just the most humble guy, I think, for somebody who as accomplished as him. He just doesn't acknowledge it.
So humble. It's and you hear that from everybody who's ever known him or worked with him. So I mean, it's got to be true, right? Yeah. Anytime I've seen him in interviews, he's always been this very kind, humble person. That Picard panel was my favorite part of the whole Star Trek universe panel.
Yeah.
And I think because it was, it wasn't a table read, it wasn't a quick sort of, hey, here's a new show, this is what we're going to do, we're not going to break anything. And there's something when you've got Pea Stew and Marina Sirtis and Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner, all from the original TNG cast, there's so much history and so many stories between them, and they're all best friends, like off screen too in real life, and you can just see that just kind of flowing in, and it just makes the the discussion between the cast so interesting and so fun, even if one of them was a little drunk.
Number 2.
So another really good panel that came out today was Marvel 616. A lot of people may not have heard of this. It's a new show that's coming to Disney Plus. And Marvel 616, for those who may not be familiar, 616 is a number designation of
It's not an area code.
No, it is which Earth in the multiverse the main Marvel canon takes place, right?
Right.
So there's multiverse in the Marvel universe, and sometimes they tell stories that take place in these other parallel universes, but the main crux of everything, like
that's the whole Marvel universe.
Yeah, so it's
616 is main.
616 is the main universe where everything takes place. So Marvel 616, the TV show, is a documentary anthology series that's going to follow various stories about the 80-year history of Marvel Comics. Can you believe that? 80 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's older than even me. It's most of the stuff we talk about is older than Allea. This is actually older than it's actually older than me. And hey, you're older than I am, Utah. So don't even.
Wow.
It's even older than you.
It's even older than me.
I think you got like a year on me, but either way. but that year I'm clinging to that. The documentaries are about different stories, and the panel that we saw actually highlighted 2 of the episodes and 2 of the directors, and they were getting just interesting directors to do these. One of them is Gillian Jacobs from Community. She played Britta, GDB. Britta, anybody who's watched the show knows what I'm talking about. She is directing for the first time a documentary. And what I thought was fascinating is she had never read a comic before directing this.
Not into comic books at all.
Yeah. And normally I would be like, what? But this is a documentary. Like the whole point of a documentary is to go in and investigate and find stuff out. And then you reveal to everyone what you learned and uncovered and that kind of thing. So a lot of documentarians don't go in necessarily as perfect experts of this thing that they're documenting. And so this to me proved to be a fascinating when she's doing the history of women in Marvel, not just as characters, but as writers and artists and executives and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. What did you guys think?
One thing that I did find very interesting about Jillian's documentary was how she decided to go after women's roles that weren't necessarily, I guess you could say, highlighted or would be commonly approved in traditional society amongst the Marvel community, but then also within Marvel itself. So when she was talking about Ms. Marvel, the Muslim superhero, I thought that was very compelling because you don't normally hear about seeing I guess you could say the underdogs and women really taking the stage and just exemplifying them. I appreciated that. And like you said, especially since she didn't have any type of comic book background, and then taking it upon herself to actively learn and engage and be kind of like that open book and learning the role that she needed to play, so that way she could make this documentary episode compelling. I thought that was really, really inspiring.
Yeah, and they showed that clip from it, and where they introduced Ms. Marvel, and just how I thought that was kind of really an interesting. I mean, I've known that was like a controversial idea at the time. It shouldn't have been, but it was. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was just like,
and just very recently too. I mean, we're talking just a couple of years,
right? But just that nobody had told a story from a young Muslim girl. Those are 3 things: a young female and Muslim. Right?
3 things that were untouched,
and just not usually from their perspective. And then Ms. Marvel comes along and becomes huge. And I think that was the author, the writer that they got. I remember in the clip, she was like, "You're crazy!" Like what? Right? Why would this work? And she's Muslim. She's speaking from her own experience. She just didn't think it would catch on, and it did. And so that was kind of fascinating.
It was really impressive to hear that Gillian Jacobs, did her due diligence. I mean, she was not interested in comics growing up, had nothing to do with the comics universe at all. And she, like Allea said, she just dove right in and, became the director and the person that she needed to be in order to get more out of this and be able to give more for her episode. And from what I understand, she's kind of a fan now too, so that's cool.
I was going to say, even just for young women that are listening out there, even if you don't have a interest in comics, I don't want to expose her age, but she is older, and
not seasoned, just older.
Yes, not seasoned, just older. And she's, taken an interest in it now. I think that speaks volumes for if you don't have an interest in something in this instance, comics, there might be that one thing that they were speaking in regards to on the panel that will catch your eye or your interest and kind of start that that journey for you.
Yeah, and Paul Scheer was one of the other directors of an episode, and you may remember, if you saw him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's been in a ton of shows, The League. Yeah. He's somebody that you would recognize, but maybe not recognize his name, but he's actually worked in comics and has written comics and is also a huge fan of comics. And his episode is about the kind of lesser known heroes and villains that are out there. And that part was cracking me up because I vaguely remember a couple of the ones they said. Other ones I
wrote them down.
Did those actually exist? Tell us what they were, Allea. Because
so one was the Wizard.
Yeah.
The Wizard.
Wasn't Asbestos Woman one? Was that a real one? Asbestos Woman?
Asbestos Reed, I believe that's what her name was.
Right. What the?
What else?
Dr. Druid. Dr. Druid. I probably pronounced that wrong.
Wait, that was the one that basically was like a ripoff of Doctor Strange in a bathrobe.
Strange. Yeah.
And which is their own character that they ripped off too, which is hilarious.
Typeface, and that poor
guy. That was the best one.
That was my favorite.
Oh my gosh.
So this.
Oh no! Wait. What about Hell Cow?
Yeah, that was great.
That was a good one. Well,
but Typeface basically didn't he lost his job or sign business went out of business, and so he uses the letters and puts like R on his forehead for revenge and throws letters at people and they're just like what is happening?
Children's blocks.
Yeah, just crazy. But yeah, these characters existed. I can't wait to watch that episode. But the whole series basically is going to be a different director taking on a different story. So it's very anthological. It is an anthology. And like I said, each director will come at it with their own voice, with their own preconceived notions, with their own questions, and we'll see the Marvel universe from like a different perspective each time. I'm looking forward to that. To me, that sounds really, really interesting.
No, it sounds great. I'm hoping that they didn't choose the two most interesting or compelling stories to spotlight on the panel.
Right.
Yeah. Even like when they were with Paul Scheer, when they were talking about the I can't remember the gentleman that took over Black Panther, but Black Panther really wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And then he was saying, and this kind of alludes back to what I was speaking in reference to with Jillian, a lot of people might not have been hip or, up to date with Black Panther prior to, his debut film, but that might be the segue for you to get into comics or Marvel movies or whatever the case may be.
That's coming out soon, right? Just I don't remember the date it's coming out.
Mm-hmm. But there is 6 episodes.
Yeah
I want to say August, but
that feels right. We're so informative.
Number 3.
Amazon Prime really came out strong. I feel they had several panels going on. There were 2 in particular. Well, there's 3 in particular, but we're saving one of them for one of our other numbers here. But there's 2 that I want to talk about real quick. One was called Truth Seekers. This is a new show from Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, who are the geniuses behind Shaun of the Dead. All of the
Hot
what was
Fuzz.
The Hot Fuzz at World's End? There was
Paul.
Yeah, that one wasn't as good. But anyway, both of them are hilarious. Very, very funny. Yeah, that's true. They are very funny. And this Truth Seekers show basically follows Nick Frost, who is a broadband engineer who is basically installs your internet, I think is what he does.
Is his name Ned too? I feel like his name was Ned.
I don't remember, but
that's a great name for that, right?
Yeah. He decides to start investigating supernatural phenomenon and ghosts and things like that. So it's a real send up of X-Files and ghost hunters, and it's like a mix of all these, and YouTube. That's what Nick Frost said, is like all of these things to combine, where you can find an exorcism videos on YouTube, and it's like for a moment there's that creepy, like, is this real? And then you're like, no, this is garbage.
It's not.
But the one thing that I really liked about the panel and what they told us was going to happen with this show is that it's a horror comedy. And if you saw Shaun of the Dead, they let the horror be horrific, right? And the comedy is like its own thing. So this show is going to be scary. I think it's going to have some really like frightening and scary moments. But then obviously there's going to be a lot of hilarity too, because these guys are hilarious.
No, I think that's what makes their stuff so good is, when they combine comedy and horror, the comedy isn't from making fun of the horror. It's sort of making fun of the situation or something else, but the horror is still horror. So yeah, it looks good. I'm always on board if it's, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, just because I'm a big fan of all their other stuff. So.
Oh yeah, all the way back to Spaced, their sitcom that they did.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Those guys are funny when they're together. And Nick Frost, I believe, is the main character in this. Simon Pegg has an incredible wig and plays his boss, I think, but I don't know that he's like necessarily a main character.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it if you watch the trailer, and that dropped today because of this, so you can find that on YouTube. I'll include a link in the show notes. Check that out because it looks like it's going to be really fun. And I can't stand those ghost hunter shows. One of my daughters likes to watch those, even though she makes fun of them or whatever. But for this to be kind of a send up of that, I'm looking forward to that.
It's ripe. It's ripe for comedy.
Oh yeah,
that genre of television.
So it's actually a UK production that's coming to Amazon Prime. So that is kind of like an interesting. The whole thing is a UK production. It all takes place in the UK. It's not something that that they're bringing over and Americanizing. So it's still going to have their distinct UK humor that that they're known for. And so I'm looking forward to that. The other show that Amazon Prime premiered today or talked about was Utopia. Now, the interesting thing about this also was a British show, a UK show that came out on the BBC, and the HBO, or I think it was HBO, wanted to do it here with David Fincher, and somehow that didn't work. And now Amazon Prime has picked it up, and Gillian Flynn, who was behind Sharp Objects and Gone Girl, she is the one running this show and writing this show. So she took the British show and tried to figure out how to make it work in America. So it's a very different, from what I understand, it's kind of a similar plot, but they're doing their own thing. And it's not just Americanizing something that, was, basically shot for shot over here, and then we're just going to do it over here, but
like
worse.
The first episode of The Office. Like
sometimes we do. This is literally like, she's just like, well, let me take that over here. How would it work in our society with our culture and with our, news media and things like, how would this all play out in America? And so it's going to be interesting to see that take. It stars John Cusack and Rainn Wilson. So that's kind of cool. John Cusack, I haven't seen him in much of anything lately. Now he is going to be on this show. It's 8 episodes, limited series. Maybe there'll be a second series. Who knows? But that's the initial. And the plot, I guess I didn't mention the plot. Maybe if I mentioned the plot, you would decide if you were interested in the show or not. Aren't you just interested because John Cusack and Rainn Wilson? Because that's enough for me. But no, the plot is what I thought was really kind of interesting. Is the concept is it's about nerds, comic book nerds, who start to realize that this conspiracy that's listed or that plays out in this graphic novel series actually seems like it may actually be happening in the real world. And so there's comedy, there's drama, there's sci-fi. There's a lot of interesting things going on. So
something for everybody.
Yeah. And so Amazon Prime is kind of knocking it out of the park because they've got some very interesting shows coming for nerds. And
when does Utopia come out? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know. Sometime in August.
Everything's coming out.
Everything's
in August.
coming out in August.
It just says tentative release date around the fall of 2020. So,
which means next year.
But again, there is a trailer, and again, I will put it in show notes.
Number 4.
Speaking of Amazon Prime, the big show that they showed today, though, was one of my favorite superhero shows, kind of period.
Ever.
I just feel like it's one of the most unique takes on the superhero genre that I've ever seen. It's also the show I recommend the least to people, and it's called The Boys. So
The Boys.
Yeah, The Boys. No, The Boys is based on a comic series. The comic series is incredibly graphic.
Oh, it's super graphic,
incredibly
super
dark, incredibly raunchy.
Pretty twisted.
And so I was like, why would I be interested in this show? I actually started the comic, thought it was a really interesting premise, and it got so bad that I just stopped reading. I just didn't like it. But when the show came out, I was like, all right, I'm gonna see what, how this looks. Now, the show is dark still. It is violent. It does deal with very mature subject matter. But I feel that it is worlds better than the comic in how it tells the story, how the characters develop. Like, everything about this show improves upon what the comic did. So that's where I feel balance. This is where I'm so conflicted, because I can't, it's one of those shows. I think it's brilliantly written, brilliantly acted, has really challenges social commentary and conventions. And it's, goes all the right directions that art can go, but it's so dark and violent that I can't recommend it to most of my friends because I feel like it would be too much for them. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart.
I agree with you. The Boys is probably my favorite superhero TV show for exactly why you stated, because it takes a very different tack on presenting superheroes, about what if superheroes actually did exist, and they wouldn't necessarily be the whole Superman in his Fortress of Solitude doing his own thing and protecting the world. They very probably would be part of corporate America somehow and be marketed and
social media.
Yeah, social media, and just, and then you get into the actual personalities of these people, because they're not going to be the Boy Scout that Superman is. They will be human in a way where they have flaws, and how they say that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's certainly bound to happen. And they may do horrible, heinous things that will make ordinary people really dislike them and perhaps even want revenge.
Right. Well, that's in the panel, actually, they spoke a little bit about that it's in most comic books, it is power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But in this situation, what they're trying to draw out in this show is how these people were already bad people.
And
do you know what I mean?
Given power,
it's like the powers draw out
the worst.
The worst. It's kind of like, imagine somebody that you don't like, who's just not a nice person, and they got powers. Well, and we already have seen it in our society with Me Too and some of the other things, when celebrities who we've admired for years and we love their work and we see them doing charity stuff, and then we find out that they've abused their spouses, or they've abused, coworkers on the set or whatever, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, that person is a terrible person. And that's kind of what this is. So it's like, they didn't suddenly become terrible. They now have more access and more power to be able to lord over people.
That's definitely a good point. And it's also interesting that, a lot of times in superhero shows, a lot of the powers are somehow either just appear through being a mutant, or, some kind of lab accident. But in this show, it's almost as if the corporation is trying to make supers, and they don't care who. Right. And this is why you get the terrible people with powers. Right. So.
And some of them are good, some of them are bad, but the idea is, and the boys in this show, they are a ragtag group of guys who, and one female, the female, they call her. Right. Kimiko, I think is her actual name, but she's the one female. I think they just call her the female for the longest time. But yeah, they are guys who want to stop these supers, who basically are like, these guys have power that they're lording over and using to do terrible things. And who is going to police them? Well, I guess it's got to be us. And they don't have powers, most of them. So that's what's kind of fun. It's like, how are they going to do this? But yeah, it's very graphic violence, like very. But it's such a well-told story. I'm so torn. It's one of those, like, I can't recommend it, but I also can't recommend it enough. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. No, I'm so torn with that show because it's so good and so well written, and it has so much interesting things to say, but it does so in a way that's not for everybody. So I just want to warn folks that it's definitely not for everybody. So
this is not your kid's superhero show.
Yes. If you put this on and are horrified because, and then you blame me, I did warn you. I'm just going to say that. They announced that it has already been approved for a third season. So
and season 2
drops September 4th on Amazon Prime. We get 3 episodes right off the bat, and then every week after that. The finale is early October, I believe. And then season 3 has already been greenlit. So we just need to get out of their houses so they can actually produce it.
So they can actually do
that's what Seth Rogen actually joked about. It's like, if we can ever see each other again, we're going to make this. So that is good news. So season 3 has already been approved. It's going to be interesting to see where they go next. We still don't know how they're going this. The other announcement was that there's going to be an after show now. So just like Talking Dead for Walking Dead, there's Aisha Tyler, who also hosted the panel last year and this year at Comic-Con. She is hosting an after show where she'll talk to some of the actors and producers about the show and where it's going and what they think. Just like if you enjoyed Talking Dead and that kind of stuff, and you enjoyed this show, this is a chance to get some behind the scenes insight as to why these characters are doing the crazy degenerate things that they're doing.
And Aisha Tyler is a great moderator, great host.
Oh yeah. I love she's great.
Number 5.
Very excited about this. I didn't know that I would be, to be honest with you, because this is a movie that we have been talking about in pop culture world for years now. And at this point, I'm kind of like, it's got to be awful. Who cares? I just had lost interest in this at all until the panel today. And the panel I'm talking about was the one for the New Mutants, which is a Marvel film that Fox initiated when they were still Fox and not part of the Disney world. It's been delayed so many times.
Years.
Since 2018.
Yeah.
Years.
And now that it's Disney owns, people are wondering, because it was supposed to be the first Marvel movie that's actually like a horror movie. So it was a horror movie. I think at some point they were saying it might be rated R. I don't know if that has changed or what.
Oh, that'd be cool if they kept that.
Yeah, I have no idea. Or they were saying that it could be, there was all these rumors, tons of rumors surrounding this for a long time. And the initial trailer that I saw really, really kind of like leaned in hard on the horror. Like it looked like a horror movie. And I was just like, okay, this looks all right. Whatever, we'll just bring it out. And the fact that they have not released it has made some people think, oh, it must be awful. Right. Or maybe it's, so good they're waiting for the right time. I don't know. But that's the range of emotion that fans have been going through. And today on the panel, they actually showed the first 30 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Yeah, they showed the first scene.
Literally from the
opening credits.
Literally from the 20th century logo.
Yeah, from the fanfare all the way through.
All the way through the Marvel flip book thingy into like the opening sequences. And that was interesting. I was very interested in that. But when they dropped the full trailer.
Yeah, that trailer was fantastic.
What is going on? Like,
fantastic.
They definitely, jumped away from the horror and started showing more of these mutant powers and showing like, I was just like, okay, now this looks like an X-Men movie. What's happening?
And that they still kept the horror. No,
it's still there. But I'm just saying like now it really did feel like a Marvel movie. Like what's going, like this is very different.
I loved it. And this is actually like kind of the first, I was not on the comic book. I was not a part of the comic book groups or whatever. And in 2018, I was still getting hip. But fast forward to 2020, I am still getting hip, but more hip than I was. Anyways, I love the fact that, what is her name? Maisie, who plays Allea.
Maisie Williams.
Forever love that girl. Like, it's hard, but I also love the fact that she's playing a different role, and she even talked about that on the panel, playing a role as Allea, this aggressive, kind of, I don't know the correct adjective to describe her, but very
definitely aggressive, assertive.
Yeah, that like that lead role of a woman, even though she was young at that time. To her being apparently, as she stated, kind of more shy and reserved, and not as she was as Allea. So I am interested to see her play that role and her diversity as an actress. And then I am actually very excited about this because I know that I've stated this previously, but one of my biggest pet peeves is when Marvel movies or, comic books don't accurately depict a person's superpower. And I just really want to see someone like rage out with their powers. And I feel as though this might be that energy I've been looking for. Mm-hmm. So I am very, very excited.
I am in total agreement with you, Allea, and with you, Jeff, because since 2018, they mentioned New Mutants, and they very much hit hard and focused on the horror aspect of it. And it didn't really look compelling to me at all. Just because, and I'm sure, and part of it was my own bias and the fact that Fox just couldn't seem to get Mutants or the X-Men quite right. They were hit or miss with those. First Class was great. The first 2 X-Men movies were good, but then they were hit or miss. But I did like the fact that they were doing the New Mutants, because I thought that it was good to go younger and do a different group of mutants than what most people are used to seeing. But you know what? This panel really changed my mind. It turned me around. Seeing the cast and hearing them talk about their part in it, they all were very they were very impressive in terms of their knowledge of the character and what they brought to it. And I love the scene. I thought the opening scene was very interesting. The trailer was fantastic. Like I said before, that there were plenty of great powers shown, and there's also still that horror aspect of it that was, for whatever reason, not turning me on towards the movie before, but now somehow mixed in the trailer with the superpowers. And now, like you said, Jeff, now I recognize the mutants from the Marvel Universe, and now I see where this could go. And I feel like they've been delaying it because they have no idea how to market this movie.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Really. They have no idea. Because if they skew too much to horror, they're going to cut out a big demographic. But if they skew too much to the comic book side, then there's another demographic that they're going to lose. And so I feel like they're just trying to figure out how to best market it.
Which is why they're just pushing out the trailer. It's the easiest way to do that.
Yeah, and I think they hit the trailer they dropped today was a good balance, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It definitely balanced it out really well.
Although in terms of the horror side, there was 2 scenes that really stood out to me outside of that opening, because I couldn't, when she just like opened her eyes and all this stuff was happening, but the pool scene where you see like that hand going up the back, that one, and then the scene where I believe they're in a room and you just see all of these faces coming out
Coming
of
through
like,
the walls.
Yeah.
You know that stuff? Yeah.
Although, the face with the mask? Like that white face with the
those creatures with like that mask, and they take the face off, and it's like this elongated weird face with a big mouth. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. It kind of like the mask kind of reminded me of the anime.
Like from Princess Mononoke.
Yeah. Princess Mononoke, or there was another one. What is it? Maybe Spirited Away. Is that the one?
Yes, that's the other one. Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's true. The visuals look great, and and the fact that they've had this film in the can for a couple of years now, it does make me wonder if they went back and did any extra editing or added anything to it, or if what we're going to see is what they finished a couple years ago. But the trailer looks great, and this is one of those times where seeing the panel turns my opinion around, and all of a sudden I think I'm going to actually check it out. That happened with Supernatural. So,
and they said that the release date should be August 28th.
This one's in August.
That one felt right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the cool thing about this is that they kind of came right out and said it. People have been assuming this based on I guess they pretty much said it before, but now in the panel it's confirmed that it's based on the Demon Bear saga, which was which was like a 3-issue like miniseries in the New Mutants comic that came out back in the 80s, and it was about, I want to say, like 17 or 18, 19 issues in, and up until that point it had still been pretty much just an X-Men Junior type of comic. Yeah. And this was when it really turned the corner and started becoming more adult. In fact, they even like marketed it as you can't call them X babies anymore, I think, at the time, or something like that, because
that's right.
They kind of came into their own. And Bill Sienkiewicz was the author or the artist at the time, and he was involved in helping
the look of the movie.
Yeah, bringing about the look of the movie. So I'm just way more interested now. I'm way more invested. Been very disappointed with where the X-Men franchise went.
Yep.
Did not like what Fox was doing with it. I was one of those rooting and cheering like crazy when Disney bought Fox, because I'm like, finally we're going to get like real X-Men movies again. And Fantastic Four obviously is with that too. I wanted to see. So I was very, very excited. So I think a lot of that disappointment in where the X-Men have gone is part of why I was kind of like, who cares about this? Yep. It's just like, so it's these same people who have screwed up the X-Men are going to screw up New Mutants.
The Mutants. Yep.
And now I don't feel that way as much. They're definitely going in a different direction. I mean, it doesn't look like it's happening at the X-Mansion. It doesn't look like, they're students of Xavier at this time, which is how it was in the comics. It looks like they're taking bringing these characters together in a different way, but still telling a similar story, which is fine, because it's a totally new medium. You can do whatever you want, but just make it good, right? Make it compelling. If you're going to change, make it a change for the better. That's my argument whenever they decide to do. That's what I think they did with The Boys. As I said before, the comic was not that great. The show is great. If you're going to change it for the better. Maybe that's what they've done. We're going to see, but I'm very, very excited for this. And I wasn't before. All right. Well, those are the top 5 panels that we saw today. We were very excited to share those with you. Hopefully, we named 6. I cheated by throwing 2 into 1, right? But still, there's the top 5, and they were exciting. We hope that you'll take a look at those. I'll put the links in the show notes. They're only going to be there as long as San Diego Comic-Con leaves them up. So, but depending on when you're listening to this podcast, if you're listening to it late, well, I apologize if they're not there anymore. That's on you. You should subscribe to the podcast so that you get it immediately and can listen to it the day that it comes out, which is every Friday. So make sure that you do that. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about some of the panels that we saw that were kind of interesting that we did want to share, and then preview what else you might be looking to try to see this weekend at San Diego Comic-Con. Don't go anywhere. Hey, everybody. We hope you're enjoying The Podcast is Real, which is the official podcast here at World Gone Geek. We hope you enjoy the website, worldgonegeek.com, which is a parody and satire site of pop culture news. We really enjoy doing it, so we hope that you enjoy reading it and listening to the podcast. But many of you have asked, how can you help? What can you do to support the podcast? Well, most importantly, spread the word. Let people know what's going on. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, share the tweets, share the posts, share the grams, whatever. All of those things go a long way in letting people know that we're here. People jump on these things and listen to podcasts mostly via word of mouth. So tell people what we're doing. We'd love that. Another way you can support us is by, in your favorite podcast app, find a way to give us a review. Give us 5 stars, tell people that you like what we're talking about, whatever. But if you were to vote, especially on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, if you were just to click those favorite buttons or those stars, that would be huge. It helps us rise up the list. It helps us be noticed by more people, and therefore more people will start to listen. And finally, if you'd like to get involved in a really concrete way, we do have a Patreon account, patreon.com/worldgonegeek. We have several tiers there where you can actually support the podcast financially, even as low as $2 a month. Did you know that if we ended up with 10 patrons at just $2 a month, that would help pay for one of the hosting costs for one of the things that we're doing here? So we would love it if you'd be able to do that. We totally understand if you can't. There's plenty of other ways to help, as I said before. But I do want to let you guys know about the Patreon account, because right now this would be a sponsor break and we don't have any sponsors yet because we just got started. We're just getting rolling. Once we have a lot more listeners and a lot more of a following, we could maybe look into that. But in the meantime, we'd love to have your support in all the ways that I just described. If there's any of those things that you feel in your heart that you would like to do to be a part of the show, we'd appreciate it. Most importantly, though, I am so glad that you are listening. Thank you. Thank you for downloading this podcast and listening, because that means the world to me. We're not just talking out into the air, that there are people on the other end actually appreciating what we do. Thanks so much for being there. Let's get back to the show. All right, welcome back. We're still talking about San Diego Comic-Con. We just got done speaking about all of the cool panels that we got to see today. But we're also going to give you a quick preview of some of the panels that we're looking forward to over the weekend that maybe you might want to keep an eye out for. You saw one about conspiracies, right? Tell us what that was about.
Yeah, so this was actually and I believe it was like a podcast, a group of podcasters that decided to do a panel on conspiracy theories and propaganda throughout pop culture. J.D. Lombardi, which is the host and producer of U2's Lombardi's Lab, Justin Montgomery, who has his own little side thing, Guadalupe and J.D. Lombardi are both science teachers. So they provided a very unique, a very unique and scientific approach to conspiracy theories, as well as just propaganda within mass media.
And I'm going to just throw out real quick that this was actually from a Wednesday panel, which a lot of those focus on education. I'm saying this so that if people want to go check this out, not to be confused, this is actually on Wednesday, and that's why there are educators involved in that. So what did they talk about?
They talked about, what an actual conspiracy theory is, the controversy between it, what we think a conspiracy theory is versus what, and I say we as in general people, but apparently we don't know how to look at a dictionary. I don't know. But they gave the definition just so that way those that didn't know what conspiracy theories were, they can be enlightened. And then they gave a pretty good quote, and I'll just read that out to you. It is from Alan Moore, the author of Watchmen, and it says, Conspiracy theorists believe conspiracy because that is more comforting. The truth is far more frightening. Nobody is in control. The world is rudderless. So that's kind of how they started this panel. Mm-hmm.
That's a very Alan Moore thing to say.
That's absolutely Alan Moore. Recognizably Alan Moore.
Yeah.
So I will ask you one of the questions that they asked each other and that they were kind of presenting. They did 3 different segments within the panel. Why are conspiracies so ingrained in our entertainment? And then are comics and movie fans more susceptible to conspiracy theories? Yeah. You guys have any answers?
Questions.
Those are interesting. Those are good questions. I would think that, and this is just my opinion. My feeling is that comic book fans and movie fans, I would say, probably aren't as susceptible, just because they see, read, and experience fantastic things that don't necessarily, extraordinary things happening in fantastical places and things. And so there's a lot of fiction there, and I think they recognize the fiction. So that's what I feel like. What was the first question?
Why are conspiracies so ingrained in our entertainment?
Oh,
AKA Hydra is S.H.I.E.L.D. That was one.
Oh, hail Hydra.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe I feel like that's, I guess, in corollary to what I just said, fiction also happens to be a very easy way to disseminate information that isn't necessarily correct. So I guess that's why it's fiction. But, when you put a conspiracy theory down in a very nice, easy to absorb delivery mechanism like a comic book or a television show or something else, then it makes it easier for someone to kind of fall into that, which then also sort of contradicts what I just said about the second question, I guess, about how comic book fans and movie fans aren't as susceptible. But maybe they still aren't, even though that's an easy content delivery mechanism. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think when you just were saying about fiction, it reminded me of a Stephen King quote, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan, where he said, fiction is a lie and good fiction is the truth inside the lie.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a little bit of truth. I mean, why is Stephen King's books so scary? It's because he tries to find things that are relatively normal, everyday life, and then make them supernatural or terrifying, whether it be a car or whatever. And right now, so many people feel like we're living through The Stand, right? Where this disease was, released onto the people, this super flu. And there was a conspiracy involved there. Of course, it also involved Randall Flagg and basically Devil and all these other things.
There are a couple other things
going on,
too.
but it all centered in a government lab and all this kind of stuff. And that's what a lot of people believe occurred with this. Even if that government lab was in China or whatever, the reigning theory is at the time. But I feel like it's interesting. Do comic readers and pop culture people believe those more? I don't know. That's a really good question. I would say if you looked at my Facebook feed right now, no. Most of the people who are spreading the conspiracy theories right now are not people I would associate with pop culture people. Well, I know Alea's spreading some of those right now. There's a couple of them are compelling, and that's why they're interesting, right? Because they're compelling. The Wayfair thing that was going on, I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. Like, what, it's just weird enough to be sort of compelling, but then there's also enough, things to kind of lead away from that being true. But I feel like a lot of people, one of the things that I keep telling, and here's the thing, so many different conspiracies, so many things that people are saying, memes that are incorrect, fact-checked articles, all this kind of stuff. And I find myself this is why I just try to stay out of the politics on Facebook anymore. It's because I am not a Trump supporter, but I find myself defending him whenever someone says something that's clearly false, right? Like, I feel like the truth is horrible enough. Right?
It doesn't need to be.
Like, there's plenty of true things that you could say, right? That we don't have to make up new things or misread or take out of context things that weren't to paint this person as somebody that you don't like. Do you know what I'm saying? So to me, it's like for every lie or every propaganda or conspiracy lie that a meme spreads, that's one less thing that that makes people want to believe the things that are true. because they find out that was a lie. And they're like, well, what about this other thing? That's probably a lie too. Maybe all the things they're saying are lies about him. And it's all just a liberal agenda trying to, bring down the president and blah, 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 and I'm like, so stop spreading the false, right? And focus on the truth, because the truth is scary enough.
And it was interesting because you said you were talking about the virus, and that was one thing that they did bring up in terms of examples. So a few examples that they gave, and actually I want to say this before I get into the examples. So one of the hosts, he had a whiteboard behind him of some
that's what conspiracy theorists use.
Right? Whoa. So he had a few things written on the whiteboard. They were Magneto was right.
He was right.
The Court of Owls runs Gotham. Okay. Tupac is alive, and it's a lovely day, or it's lovely weather for chemtrails. So just
I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually have a neighbor who believes in chemtrails. We always have fun discussions.
So some of the examples that he did give was the legacy virus with the mutants. So blame the mutants and, make everyone think that they're horrible and this is why you should lock them up and keep them as slaves and kill them or whatever. But then they kind of compared it to COVID and, made it. And that's why people think it's like some sort of propaganda or maybe some sort of a conspiracy theory, in the comic book realm. And then the Watchmen was another example. So the one gentleman said, every good conspiracy needs solid propaganda. For example, Spider-Man Far From Home with...
with Mysterio.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
And then they had a few more questions, and this one was in regards to propaganda. They did delve a little bit further into the scientific reason with the two science teachers, but those ones I weren't too savvy with, just because it was interesting. They were just trying to teach people how, to educate yourself, not to ask why, or, because that is a good thing, but be and critical thinkers when you're deciding what is, a conspiracy theory. So another question I have for you guys is, what makes good or believable propaganda work in pop culture? And then what makes these characters effective or realistic? You want me to read the first question again?
Yeah, because I'm going to ask about the first question because I forgot it already.
What makes good or believable propaganda work in pop culture?
Oh, I think there's a certain talent to making things that aren't true seem true. And I feel like, I think we all know that there's a certain line where something is believable, but then all you have to do is add like a unicorn, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, obviously that's not true. But if you take the unicorn out and replace it with a horse, this is a horrible analogy. But if you just like sprinkle in a little bit of conspiracy over something that sounds plausible, I think that's really the recipe for it. Because for me, the thing that I always use in my head as a thermometer about conspiracies is, well, let me think about how many people would have to keep this a secret. And the more people that have to keep it a secret, the higher the probability that there will be failure of keeping it a secret.
Right.
So
that's how I judge a real conspiracy.
Well, right. It's one of those things. Like I think one of the examples I've always used is, all right, if you believe that we never went to the moon, I think multiple people have calculated that it would take almost 500,000 people to keep their mouths shut about not going to the moon, because that's how many people were involved in the actual engineering of that mission. And so if you've got 500,000 people that are trying to keep this secret, the probability of that being successful since 1967 is very slim. So yeah. Right there off the bat, I'm thinking, no, I think we actually did go to the moon. I'm not sure that it was a big conspiracy to make us think we went there. So I don't even know if I answered any questions.
You did. And I'll go on to the second one unless, Jeff, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I'm on the same page. It's you have just enough truth. I mean, it's just like satire, right? So one of the things we try to do on World Gone Geek website is write satire, and I haven't done it in a while, so the articles on there are very old. But the reason satire works is because it's just close enough to something that you might believe is true that and that's why it's funny, right? Because you said something absurd, but there's just enough truth in it. You're like, oh my gosh, this world is just crazy enough where that might be a true story, right? And so the best satire does that. The Onion is flipping genius at pulling that kind of stuff off.
Yeah, they're so good.
Babylon Bee is another good one that does that. And World Gone Geek is if it would write more than 10 articles.
I would say that World Gone Geek rounds out the triumvirate of satire sites on the internet.
But yeah, the whole idea, you could almost imagine that's you could almost imagine it's true, and some people share it as true, and you have to point out this is the Onion, and then you're right. Oh yeah, duh. And that's good satire. And I think conspiracy is kind of the same way. There's enough of it that's true that when you throw the false stuff in, people just gobble it up. You know what I mean? Because they're like, oh yeah, that sounds right. That sounds like something Trump would say, or that sounds like something Biden would do, or whatever. You know what I mean? And a lot of it's confirmation bias, right? So if you already believe that Biden is a bad person or that Trump is a bad person, and then I say some outrageous thing about either one of them, depending on which person you are, you're gonna confirm that bias by saying, oh yeah, that sounds exactly like something that person would do. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden it's a quote unquote fact that you're going to share on Facebook. And I think that's where a lot of these conspiracies come from. It's just believable enough that, I mean, like the Wayfair thing, like, is that true or not? Like, we really don't know, but there's some compelling things. And then there's others that are just beyond the pale. Like, there's no way that's true. And
that's so Chrissy Teigen. Yeah.
There's just some, it's hard. Like I don't want that Wayfair thing to be true, but human trafficking is a gigantic problem in the world today. And it's one we don't talk about. And so if this conspiracy is getting people talking, great, but not if it's getting us looking in the wrong direction for the villains. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last question that they asked, and this is just the propaganda side, was what makes these characters effective or realistic in terms of propaganda. And some of the examples that they gave was Bane, Killmonger, Magneto, and Palpatine.
Like that they all had good ideas. Well, there are a lot of people who think Thanos had a good idea.
Yeah, that is true.
He was just misunderstood.
There are people who make that argument, but it's still wrong.
But how do these characters, become effective or realistic with propaganda?
Well, I think those are all very, very sympathetic characters. I mean, the way they're written too, like especially Magneto from the movies, especially him being a child of the Holocaust,
right?
And then experiencing just outrageous persecution for no reason, and then persecution because of these because of their mutant powers. Now, but then the great thing about the X-Men, I'm sorry, I could talk for hours about the X-Men, but the beautiful thing about that is you're right. Like there's like, you can almost feel for the villains and the heroes. Like it was such a great series to address issues like racism and homophobia and all this kind of stuff back in the day, back in the 80s. I mean, they were definitely like addressing all of those kind of issues using mutants as kind of this, I don't know, example, right? And in the analogy. But at the same time, some of these mutants have so much power that you almost are like, well, yeah, of course we need to monitor and keep, you know what I mean? Like, Xavier was letting people who could blow up entire city blocks be part of the team. And what would happen if one of them got angry? And we saw what happened in the Civil War series. You know what I mean? One of the new mutants was responsible for killing all these people at a school, and the world wanted to register.
They wanted to register mutants.
Yeah, and heroes. That was this.
Yes.
Also, any superpowered person
Right.
should be registered. And I've had this talk with people in my own family about the Civil War, the movie, with because they didn't read the comics back in the day when the mutants were involved, but just the fact, like, was Captain America or Tony Stark right? Which team were you on?
I've got a soft spot for Cap, so I was.
Oh yeah,
on
well, I'm
Cap's
definitely a Cap side, but
side.
but because his was about individual liberty, and I'm all about that. But at the same time, you can't argue with, or you can argue, but I'm just saying, but you can see the side of someone like Tony Stark who is powerless without his equipment, right?
Without his artwork, yep.
With literally, is standing next to a god who could crush him with one, or the Hulk for that matter. And so he's imagining a world where these people are free and just have no, oversight whatsoever. And Cap's like, well, yeah, they're free to be, and if they decide not to be, then that's where we step in. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's why we have the police. That's why we have the military. That's why we have laws, right? Is because we don't want certain things to happen, but we still have to allow people the freedom to make wrong choices, which is hard to, and we're dealing with that in politics and in our country right now. Is, people are fighting over whether they have the freedom to make a wrong choice. And then, well, if it affects other people, then you don't have that freedom.
Correct.
So
with freedom comes responsibility.
Yeah. These are interesting topics. It's getting deep. We've never been this deep on this show, but I like it. I mean, this is interesting to talk about, and you're right. And they're right to bring it up in this panel. It's such a huge topic and so much of pop culture, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that was one of the biggest reasons why I decided to watch it, especially because as you see what I repost or share, and most of it is just merely because I like to do my own research later, and I don't always have time to like fact check everything. But I guess what I should probably do is just make it private or something like that before the entire world decides to comment horrible things.
Never read the comments.
I know, right? But I mean, it is prevalent, and sometimes, comic books or movies do portray or enhance specific types of things that are going on in our society. And it could sometimes be for the better, like you were saying with X-Men, or sometimes it could be, negative. And I don't necessarily have an example, but, if you guys do, feel free to shoot one out. But, sometimes it can be negative, or have a negative impact in terms of conspiracy theories, or even just on the propaganda side. And then, of course, I just was interested to hear what they had to say about both, and also the scientific side, right? Having two science teachers that are interested in fact checking and making sure that people are critical thinkers and asking themselves not just why or how could this be accurate, but making sure that they're utilizing credible sources, and before they go and share this with their friend and family members and all of this stuff and spread misinformation, make sure that what you're actually sharing and stating to other people is actually true, because a lot of people do get freaked out with and rightfully so. Child sex trafficking is prevalent in our world. That it just is what it is. But before you go and share these different things with your family or people that, like a new mother, make sure that you are correct in what you're saying. I know right. That was kind of abrupt, but it is true, Yeah. Oh yeah, be careful because your child's going to get abducted. And she's like, oh my gosh, I just had a baby. My child's going to get abducted.
I think this is a great discussion. Like I said, we've never gotten this, we never usually go this deep. And I definitely don't want to get into the politics of all of that kind of stuff, because that, obviously everybody is entitled to their own opinions and all of those kind of things. But at the same time, I think the most important thing to take away from that is what you said, Allea, or what their point was in the panel, was to be critical thinkers. I think that's the problem. A lot of people who post these things haven't really thought it through. They've got confirmation bias. They've found something that fits the narrative that they agree with, and they spread it without taking a second to think, what is it really saying?
It's like
and
wildfire.
is it helpful? Is it harmful? What am I actually doing by sharing this? And people don't think anymore. It's one of the reasons if I didn't need Facebook to market this podcast and to market other things that I'm working on, it's not. And Twitter is just a cesspool of toxicity nowadays. There's so much, toxic, but there's some good stuff in there too. It's really, it's hard to find that stuff.
I miss when Twitter was just funny.
But that's right. Some of the panels that you can find out at San Diego Comic-Con at home are about these kind of topics. It's really kind of cool to see. It's not just, some of these things really do make you think. It's not just, gushing over the things that we're passionate about, but there's actually some really, really good stuff in here. If you're an artist, you're going to find a lot of cool panels talking about how to get better at art, how to market yourself, how to start your own business, how to build a brand in a pandemic is another one that I watched today with someone who's going to be a guest in the near future, right? Tony Kim is going to join us next week to talk. We're going to do a recap of some Comic-Con stuff with Tony Kim. He has a brand, Hero Within, which is some clothes, but he talks with some other people about making comics, making cosplay, and writing books. And I thought that was a really fascinating panel to check out. So check that one out. What else did you see any other panels? We don't have a ton of time to go through a lot. That was a great discussion, but let's just share some of the other side panels that we thought were interesting. If you'd like to share some of those, this is the time. And then we'll do a little preview of what's coming up this weekend. So Utah, what else did you see out there?
Well, in terms of the conspiracy one, I was definitely interested in it. I'm hoping that it's still up so I can take a look at that.
Looks like it is, yeah.
So I'll be checking that out. But, there are other things on there. There's a lot of LGBTQ stuff in terms of like representation on television, representation in movies. Shudder, the horror streaming service, has a panel on titled "Horror is Queer," talking about LGBTQ and horror movies specifically. So that's like you said, there's just so many interesting things. Heck, I know we're not talking about the rest of the weekend quite yet, but NASA always has at least one panel at Comic-Con, and this year they're talking about going back to the moon and beyond. And William Shatner is moderating that panel.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So that's happening. I think that's happening on Saturday. But yeah, there's lots of great stuff. If you're into Pokemon trading cards or just Pokemon in general, maybe Pokemon history, there's a lot of books and authors and everything else going on. So it's not strictly just comic books and pop culture and superhero movies. There's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, William Shatner hosting a panel with NASA. I'm gonna have to check that out.
That sounds like it'd be fun. What are some other ones that you saw around today or maybe that you haven't checked out yet, Allea, but you want to?
For today?
Yeah.
Or just, okay.
Or in general. Yeah, we could go ahead and do the preview of the weekend as well.
Oh, okay.
We'll come back. We'll come back to you, Utah.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, because Doomed, the untold story of Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four is going on tonight.
Oh, that's tonight. Unfortunately, while we're recording, I think it's going on right now, or maybe it's a little bit later.
It'll start in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we got to wrap this up.
All right. So there was a few things that I was interested in finishing up today. So the Comic-Con Museum, I don't know if you guys saw that.
It's pretty cool.
I am interested in watching that. And then I did find some anime for my anime viewers out there.
Yes.
I saw, and I know that I'm going to butcher these names. Kaguya-sama? Love is War?
Kaguya-sama, yes.
Yes. And then Kakashi Goto. I said that so wrong. I feel like Kakashi. I don't know. There was a few anime series that I was very interested in. Of course, I try to be into my anime. And then they do have one on Gundams, so they are going to be playing different episodes and movies, or just, I don't even remember what I was trying to say. Sorry. They're going to be playing or showing different anime episodes, and then some movies on there as well. And then a few other things that I was interested in.
You're interested in continuing the Avatar legacy, right?
Yes, and I have that on there, and I was actually getting ready to mention that. And then also they do have the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and that was like, I grew up definitely watching that. And then I do want to mention this just personally. They do have some African American stuff out there for all of my people of color. I definitely had to shout that out because women of color in comics it holds a very dear place in my heart. So if you don't think that there's anything out there for you, they definitely have something at San Diego Comic-Con that will speak to you.
Yeah, there's also similarly, Entertainment is Female is tomorrow at 11 a.m. All these are PDT, by the way. We're in Eastern ourselves.
That's right. So add 3 hours.
Add 3 hours to any of these times.
Eastern time. Yeah.
But at 11 a.m. PDT, Entertainment is Female, conversation with Hollywood executives, talking about female representation in Hollywood and adapting comics and games to the big screen, which is, I think that one sounds like it'll be really interesting, especially some of the companies and folks that are involved in that one. That's an interesting conversation that could happen. The other things that I'm looking forward to today, I think we pretty much mentioned everything that I was interested in today, but actually, no, there was a storyboard one that you went to, a Cartoon Network storyboard, right? Allea, didn't you check that out?
Yeah, that one was great. And actually, when you were talking about Apple and Onion, he's one of the panelists.
Oh, cool.
So Chuck, that's his name, right? Chuck Klein. He is one of the panelists. And then Mick Graves from The Amazing World of Gumball is on there. Who else?
Oh, we love that show in that house.
Yeah, and then Summer Camp Island. So the creator and the storyboard artist was on there as well. So it was pretty neat. Just if you are interested in, storyboard and actually hearing how to make it as an artist.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is really cool about this is, again, like I said, it's not just about gushing over the things that we're passionate about, but you can literally get some education, some information on how to advance your own skills as an artist or a writer. There's some writers panels. It's definitely worth checking these out. The big things I'm crazy about tomorrow, though, on Friday, is towards the evening, there is a Walking Dead panel. I kind of gave up on Walking Dead after Negan got introduced and the whole bait and switch they did with the ending of that season with Glenn and that. I was like, that was so lame. It was such a stunt. I'm like, come on, you guys are better than this. Like, don't do a stunt. And it was just a big stunt. And I just thought that was lame. And I know, especially the way I mean, we already knew who was going to, get it because of the comics, we assumed, right? But then just the way they pulled it off, it was just a stunt, and I lost faith in them. And it got real dark after that. But I'm kind of interested in seeing where it's going next because they've got a new series, Walking Dead: The World Beyond, which is about more like young people who are growing up in the zombie apocalypse. So is a new show that's coming out. Yeah. So yeah, it would be like Rick's daughter. I don't think she's a character, but it would be like that. It would be kids who are either born or were young and are now living in this world beyond, as they call it. Chris Hardwick is doing both of those panels because he does Talking Dead.
Because he's the Walking Dead guy.
Yeah, that's what he is now, right? Really,
that's what he is now.
Does Walking Dead. But the other great thing that I'm looking forward to Friday night is the Eisner Comic Industry Awards. So that is where they honor artists and comic industry folks. It's kind of like the Grammys or the Oscars for comic folks. And so I didn't realize that that was going to be aired on here, but at 7 p.m. tomorrow, you can watch those awards. I'm looking forward to checking that out because I like to see who wins that kind of stuff. Also tomorrow, sorry, I got to mention it, Bob's Burgers is having a panel, and that I absolutely adore that show. It has actually surpassed The Simpsons for me. Not overall. Wow. Like The Simpsons overall is still my favorite all-time animated show. But yeah, The Simpsons is not as good as it used to be. It's still good in my opinion. A lot of people say that it's definitely, not as good anymore. I think it has, gotten not as edgy and cool as it used to be, but Bob's Burgers makes me laugh every single time. So I love that show to death. I love those characters. And so I'm looking forward to that panel. There is a Simpsons panel this weekend as well. There is a Bill and Ted Face the Music. That one is on Saturday, I want to say.
It's on Saturday.
Yep. That is at 3 p.m. PDT. And sorry, the new trailer dropped today. It looks fun. Amazing.
It does.
And they also said that it comes out September 1st, both in theaters and on demand. And you get to choose. Now, I don't know if I'll be going to a movie at that time, but I am excited about the
choice, the option.
So we'll see. It's one I'm going to own. So if it's available for sale right off the bat, I'm probably just going to buy it and watch it at home. But yeah, no, Bill and Ted Face the Music has a panel, and I just can't wait to see Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves in a panel. That's going to be so much fun. Guillermo del Toro has a panel. Keanu Reeves is in another panel about Constantine, the 15th anniversary reunion. Yes. So that's going to be exciting. HBO's Lovecraft Country, which is
that looks good.
Really good. It's I think Jordan Peele is producing that.
Yep.
And I've read about half of the book. I borrowed it from the library on Kindle, and then it expired, and now I'm waiting for other people to stop reading it so I can get it back and finish it. But it is amazing, and it's set back in 1950s Jim Crow America, but it's also about like monsters from H.P. Lovecraft. It's a very
interesting mashup.
Oh yeah, it's really, really cool. So these are characters who are overcoming racism and terrifying horrors from other dimensions. It's just like
they're fighting two battles.
Yeah, it's really, really an interesting book. And so I recommend that book, and I'm looking forward to that show. Those are the things that I'm really, really excited about. Check those out on San Diego Comic-Cons, because these are all pre-recorded, we found out today. You will be able to, as soon as the time happens, so if it's at 3:00, for example, right at 3:00, you can literally watch the whole thing. So you can fast forward through it immediately or whatever. And then
you skip over the table read.
Yeah. And if there's stuff going on at the same time, you can just go back and watch it during one where there's no panels that you want to watch. So that's right. It's really just kind of a do it yourself Comic-Con, which is really kind of fun. I love having that much control over what I get to see, but I cannot wait Comic-Con. For some of these. Yeah. It's very, very exciting. Now, it will be more exciting to go to San Diego next year, hopefully, if everything works out and our world returns to normal and I can, save up the money. Of course, my daughter's getting married next year, so I probably won't go to San Diego Comic-Con again.
You know what? I hear there are plenty of wedding venues in San Diego.
Yeah, let's see if I can
happen to be available in, mid to late July.
Wish she could get married in Hall H during
well, I wouldn't say there haven't been any weddings in Hall H, but there have been proposals.
I'm sure. Well, I could just find some move. Maybe they'll pay for some sort of a stunt and they'll pay for it. Maybe we can make it happen.
There you go.
I don't know. Is there a wedding movie? Is there Wedding Singer 2, Adam Sandler coming out? I don't know. Or
that would be great.
You need to go. You just
Father
need to
of
go
the Bride 3. I don't know. We could see.
Fathers of the Bride.
What in the world would they do with Father of the Bride
again?
3?
Father of the Bride again? Always Father of the Bride? No.
But yeah, hopefully everything will be back to normal next year. But for now, I'm taking advantage, and you should too. It's been very, very exciting. Well, I want to thank both of my hosts here that have joined me today. Utah, thanks again for being here as always.
Of course.
Allea, thank you for joining and bringing your perspective. And
my pleasure.
We'll be back next week with Tony Kim. Just a reminder, we do not have a rewind this week, so don't look for a rewind coming next Wednesday. It's not going to be there. But we will be back with you next Friday, again with Tony Kim, doing kind of a recap of San Diego Comic-Con and then just talking about all the other pop culture fun stuff with him. So that'll be a lot of fun. Join us then. Until then, be good, everyone, and think critically.
The Podcast is Real is a World Gone Geek production.
And critically think.
Critically think. Yes, you can tell that was what I was about to say. And critically think. What am I saying? All right. That was a terrible ending. I may have to record it after you guys leave.